Some say that monsters don't exist. However, if you were living in Joplin, Missouri on May 22nd, 2011, you would beg to differ. That day I was at work. I was outside smoking a cigarette because there were no customers in the store at that time. The first thing I noticed was the incredibly low clouds in the sky. It was almost as if I could reach up and touch them. I then saw the sky change colors from overcast gray to a sort of hazy greenish yellow. I finished up my cigarette and went back inside. The weatherman on the TV had just issued a tornado warning when I heard the sirens outside. I had heard them a million times before. Joplin was no stranger to tornadoes before 2011. They usually touched down and tore up the farmlands outside of town, so I wasn't too worried at first. But I texted my wife to tell her that a tornado warning was in effect and to be safe. She texted me when and where. I told her I didn't know exactly where it was, but that I would keep an eye on the weather reports. That was the last time we spoke for several hours. I got a call from one of my coworkers telling me that he was going to go chase the tornado and maybe get some pictures of it. He wasn't supposed to relieve me that day or anything, so I wished him luck and called him an idiot. After I hung up the phone, I started to get ready to lock up. We were supposed to close at 6, but it was a retail job with bad weather and on graduation day. We only had 3 customers that entire day. I figured locking up early wouldn't be a problem. That's when the downpour began. It was soft at first, but picking up quickly. I tidied up, did some paperwork, and went to go lock the door. The entire front of the store is all glass. When I looked outside, I could see debris on the ground, basically crossing the street just to my south. It looked like dirt and large rocks, along with some wood scraps. I knew right then what was happening, though not exactly how bad it was about to get. Someone pulled into the parking lot and ran up to the front door, presumably seeking shelter. I tried opening the door for them. I'm 6 feet tall, and at the time I weighed 280, and I physically couldn't move the door. It was at that moment I knew exactly how bad it was about to get. The windows began to shake, almost bowing. I backed away quickly. It then hit me that this was now a life or death situation. I had worked in a news studio some years prior, and I knew just how dangerous tornadoes could be. I went to go lock myself in my boss's office, but he had the door locked for the weekend. Before I could turn and head to another room, the roof was gone. Holy shit, this is happening. I don't know why, but I thought the safest thing to do was to squeeze myself as much as I could into the doorframe of my boss's office. Something then flew through the store and hit me in the back. It struck me so hard that I spun all the way around and landed on my stomach. I put my right hand over the back of my head and pulled out my phone with my left, then irrationally tried to call everyone I could. I tried dialing 911, as if firefighters could show up and stop what was happening. I then tried calling my wife to tell her that I loved her, because I just knew in that moment that I was going to die, and I needed to tell her that before I was gone. My cell had no signal, so I just lay there and waited for my demise. If the rest of the structure didn't hold, I would be picked up and tossed around and land about 3 football fields away from Joplin, with my spine sticking out of my skull, or maybe some flying debris would crush my body to pieces. It was the most fucked up thing I've ever experienced. The next couple of seconds were a blur. I heard everything but saw nothing, and kept my face pressed to the ground. After what felt like hours, everything died down. I just laid there. I honestly wasn't sure if I was dead or not. I then heard screaming from all directions. I stood up and looked around, and walked outside. The town looked like it had been hit by a nuclear bomb. I had seen pictures and footage of tornado damage before, but nothing compares to witnessing it firsthand. There was a van on its side that had been thrown from the academy across the street into the pizza place next door from my store. But everyone inside the pizza joint seemed okay. The van hadn't crushed anyone. The other screams were too far away, so I just ran and flagged down a passing car. It was a couple from California. They were only in town for the graduation and had never seen anything like this. I was covered in my own blood, with open wounds all over my head, neck, and arms.
Just leave him, please. We have to save ourselves.
Honey, look at him. He's injured. We can't just leave him behind. I got in the back seat with their kids. They were very young and scared that they had to sit next to a bloody and bruised stranger. I had to coach the couple a little bit about not driving over the downed power lines and how to use the defrost for the windshield. I remember the wife was just wiping away the condensation with a towel, just for it to come right back. They were panicking just like I was. It was complete chaos. The husband asked me where I needed to go. It then dawned on me that I didn't know what to tell him. The Joplin hospital was almost completely destroyed, and were in the process of evacuating the building. So they ended up taking me to the Motel 6 they were staying at. When we pulled in, there was a bunch of people just standing around. The motel hadn't been hit, so everybody there was safe. They were just watching the never-ending parade of emergency vehicles flooding into the city. Once the people at the motel saw me, they flew into action. One woman busted out a first aid kit, while another guy applied pressure to my wounds with a towel. One guy even gave me a couple of cigarettes because mine were ruined. After they got me settled and calmed down, the woman who was doctoring me up asked me how bad it was. I can remember exactly what I told her. It's gone.
What's gone?
All of it. Everything. I'll never forget the look in her eyes when I said that. After I finished a cigarette, I tried calling my people again, but my phone simply wasn't working, so I just set it down. I figured that I would eventually walk home if I had to, but I wasn't going to until I was certain the storm had passed and I wouldn't be in the rescuers' way. I went to go lay down in an empty room. I eventually heard that same woman outside.
Whose phone is this?
She was holding my phone up, and it was somehow ringing. It seemed it had one last phone call left in it. I got up and answered it, and heard my mom's voice.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm a little cut up, but I'm okay. How about you guys? Have you seen my wife by any chance?
Yes, she was here when it came through. Everyone is fine. Thank God.
So your house is still there, right? Is my house still there?
Yes, everything is okay. We saw it from here, but we weren't in its path.
I can't tell you how relieved I was that I was the only person in my family to experience this. At the time, I thought I was the only person in my family who was mentally strong enough to be okay after something like this happened. I found out later that I was very wrong about that. My mom called my wife after we disconnected and told her where I was. She and her parents came to get me a couple of hours later. They took me home and spent about an hour or so pulling out glass from my scalp and picking out pieces of asphalt and gravel that had been embedded into my neck. My boss was out of town and didn't believe me when I told him that a tornado hit his store. Listen, if you don't believe me, turn on the news. You need a new roof, by the way. And you also have to replace pretty much your entire inventory. The next few days were filled with very little sleep, and yet I didn't lose my cool until later on. It was surreal. But in the weeks that followed, I had bad anxiety and full-blown panic attacks, and had to be placed on medication. I dealt with survivor's guilt for a long time. The person outside the store who I couldn't let in was likely swept away. I was also haunted by the screams of the people who were trapped inside the collapsed buildings. I never saw that couple from California ever again. I would love to track them down someday and thank them for taking a chance on me. Nowadays, I'm mostly okay, save for about 6 weeks between April and May. I had survived one of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history.
When the first warning sirens went off indicating that a huge tornado was about to hit Joplin, Missouri, most residents either ignored the initial warning or moved slowly to take shelter. That's the assessment of a new government report. It concludes that most residents who were surveyed said they did not go to shelters right away after hearing the first warning, partly because of years of false alarms. 162 people died in the disaster. The report says most residents didn't respond to the first sirens because of an apparent disregard for them.
I had second by second that was going on. I can't explain it to you.
Amy was released from the hospital. Others didn't even make it there.